OWCS 2025 is right on the horizon, and we actually have some amazing updates for what the next season looks like.
Good news, everyone!
Hey folks, my name is Apostle, and welcome back to Watching Overwatch, the show that covers everything you need to know about Overwatch Esports. Now, we may not have games to recap this week, but we still have plenty to go through, so buckle in. Before I jump into the news though, I do want to mention real quick that, as you can see, I've joined Oblivione, and in partnership with them, we're actually doing a jersey giveaway. I've got a separate video and post on my socials explaining that. Links are right down below, so make sure you check it out. The giveaway closes on December 10th, so be quick and enter for your chance to win. Alright, now the exciting stuff. Overwatch Esports has released its official plans for 2025, so let's break it down. First things first is the new season format. As a quick reminder, this year for NA and EMEA, we had 4 stages with a LAN in the middle followed by a break, and a LAN at the end. Asia was similar, but with only 2 stages instead. However, that's all been reworked, as here's what Blizzard shared with us. OWCS 2025 will have 3 stages across the globe and feature 3 international live events. The first stage will kick off with an open qualifier in January, followed by a regular season with the top 8 to 12 teams, depending on the region, and then a regional tournament that will qualify select teams for the international live events. So what that means is that now EMEA, NA, and Asia are all on basically the same format, which will make things way easier to follow. Plus, the addition of an extra live event means that every stage will have a sick finals to close it. Now, before we talk about the next big change, we have to cover how FACEIT factors into this. Previously, OWCS was operated on FACEIT's platform, but the FACEIT leagues were their own thing that didn't really have any connection to OWCS, which meant that teams would actually be splitting their time, potentially playing in both. In this new system, the FACEIT leagues have basically replaced the path to pro, and they're now the stairway to make it into OWCS. So if you're comparing it to the old system, FACEIT Open, Advanced, and Expert take the place of what Open Division was. The FACEIT Master Series is actually what Contenders was, but unlike the old system, if you're good enough in the Master Series, you can actually make it straight into the top level of competition. And that brings me to my next point. Overwatch Esports is finally introducing promotion and relegation. If you followed OWL, there's a good chance you've heard this discussion before, but for anyone who's unaware, here's what it means. The bottom 2 teams of OWCS can actually move down that ladder and back into FACEIT Masters, whereas the top 2 of Masters can actually claim their spots in OWCS. This means 2 big things. First, OWCS will now have a much more consistent set of teams, which has been a big thing for people. It's hard to find a team to get attached to when the players and the teams constantly change. But now we'll see much less of that, since OWCS doesn't reset after each stage. Much like OWL, you can now confidently track the games and the progress of your favorite teams. Secondly, and unlike OWL, they've solved the issue of teams going an entire year maybe without winning a game. Now, if you're not good enough to hang with the big dogs, you get replaced. Simple as that. That means that the lower skilled teams will be that much more motivated to play hard and keep their spots. So as a whole, everything here is super exciting. Now, one caveat, all those changes that I just mentioned, they are for NA and EMEA. Asia, on the other hand, they don't have quite as many changes because they don't operate with FACEIT. They have their own system, WDG, which will continue to run open qualifiers for OWCS rather than promotion or relegation. However, they did put out a statement of the changes they are making, which has hopefully been Google translated more or less accurately here. Korea is more or less the same, but Japan and Pacific have some cool changes. Japan now has 4 extra slots added, and the teams will be split into 2 groups of 6 to determine who moves to playoffs. And in Pacific, Australia is finally part of the region again. Now, I know you might be thinking, Australians could already play. I saw Frogger in OWCS. And that's true, but he was considered an import. Now though, he's not, which means we could see an Australian super team come back potentially. And on one more cool note, they also mentioned that every OWCS regular season match is gonna be getting streamed. So you no longer have to wonder if your favorite team's match is being played off broadcast. Now there's one more key thing I have to mention for Asia. Certain sources indicate that China is indeed coming back in an official capacity. The Chinese coach and caster Chen posted this, basically saying that Chinese servers are on their way and official tournaments will start up there soon after. Also, China is likely going to be separate from OWCS Asia, so it'll be considered basically its own region. This information was later backed up by Coach OC on Twitter, who herself said there will be investment directly into China to bring them back into the scene. So honestly, I think it's safe to say that we can be confident Chinese Overwatch is coming back, which is definitely something to eagerly await. Now, while we're on the topic of stuff that is basically confirmed but not fully confirmed, OC made an appearance on Plat Chat Overwatch 246, where she said that hero bans are pretty much guaranteed to be coming to the esport. Now, obviously this is big news, as the last time we saw hero bans at a tournament, it heavily cut down on mirrors, forced people to think outside the meta, and it added a really interesting strategic element from the coaches. However, OC did go on to explain that the implementation of hero bans has not been set in stone quite yet. This means that they may not copy the EWC style bans one-to-one, but the fact that that we're getting them in the first place is a big start, as it'll potentially fix the biggest issue that people have had with the game recently. Those hard-to-watch metas and the boring mirrors could be a thing of the past if they do this right, so we'll keep an eye open to see what comes of this. Now, there's one more big change that's coming to OWCS in 2025, and that's the Team Partnership Program. So to start, 9 teams from across all regions will be put into the partner program. Each partner will have an in-game bundle that will feature their branding and colors on skins and other items. So for anyone who missed the owl skins, this is basically the return of those, but arguably with cooler colors and branding. Also, partner teams will receive a portion of the proceeds from these team packs and more, which means that if you buy a skin for a team, you're actually helping support them in a tangible manner, which is amazing. We don't know which teams will be partners quite yet, and they said these in-game packs won't be available until maybe the latter half of the season, but still, it's something super cool to look forward to. So that wraps up all the changes being made to the system, at least the ones that have been officially confirmed. But we're not done yet, as following this and the wrap of the World Finals, teams and players alike have started making a ton of announcements, so let's start going through them here. Starting off, Space Station announced the free agency of all their players after the contract ended, so the London Spitfire Corps is now back on the market. And this leads me to 2 things. First, SSG themselves have said they still plan to compete in Overwatch. Their CEO actually went on to elaborate that they'd be a little closer to home next year, which I think seems to imply we'll be seeing them field a roster actually in North America instead of EMEA. And actually, according to some rumors I've heard, the partner program may require teams to field a roster in the same region they operate in. So this move by SSG could be in preparation for that. Again though, that's just a rumor. And secondly, for the players, while this is sad, these guys are still top tier players and they should have zero trouble finding a team to pick them up. Any org that's looking to get into Overwatch basically has a top 3 roster ready on a silver platter. That being said, there is also a chance the roster splits, and we're actually kind of seeing that already, as Backbone announced that he'd be retiring over on his stream. It sucks to see him go. He was undeniably talented on so many of these niche heroes, but he really was such a big piece of that Spitfire core and identity. With him leaving, it's very possible that we see the others also end up on different teams next year, assuming they hopefully don't retire as well. Next is the NRG Shock, who also had their player's contract come to an end, which means all of them are technically free agents and can explore other options. However, the lack of any official release statement from NRG means there's a good chance that we actually see them re-sign most, if not all, of their players. We see it all the time. The players are just seeing what other offers they can get, and they might be able to use other offers to negotiate their contract renewal. So for Shock fans, I wouldn't worry quite yet, especially because NRG's chief gaming officer confirmed that we will still be seeing them in 2025. It's possible that that happens with a different roster, but again, that's still TBD. We also see Toronto Defiant have announced the release of their entire roster, but haven't officially confirmed yet that it was due to contracts. Fortunately, no retirements have come through from any of these players yet, but unlike Space Station and NRG, Defiant is not confirming that they'll stick around for the future. The CEO, Adam Adamu, posted an update saying that they're not committing until they've evaluated Blizzard's commitment to building a strong and financially viable Tier 1 ecosystem. Personally, I think the OWCS 2025 updates are a great start to this, but clearly Overactive wants a little bit more. So until then, Defiant is kind of in limbo at the moment. They're not out yet, let me make that clear, but we don't know for sure they're coming back either. Fingers are crossed though. Now, while we're here, we'll get the rest of the bad news out of the way in the form of a couple more retirements, this time from Korea, as Hisu and Happy both announced their retirements this week. Hisu has been inactive since OWL ended, which is really too bad because it would have been great to see one last run from him, but he'll be going to do his military service. Whereas Happy, he just seems satisfied with closing that chapter of his life following him lifting that trophy at the World Finals. After 7 years and several big accomplishments in that time, he finally became a world champion. So best of luck to both these legends going forward. Back to the uplifting stuff though, we actually have some big name orgs who are expressing an interest in Overwatch again for the 2025 season. Firstly, T1 are looking to get back into Overwatch. For those who don't know, T1 has been in Overwatch before, as they are half owned by Comcast, who ran Philly Fusion and Soul Infernal. T1 was actually in Contenders for a while as Infernal's Academy team, and now they've announced that they're holding tryouts to put together a roster, so it'll be really interesting to see what they have in store for us. They aren't the only team to show interest though, as the CEO of Gen G, and formerly Seoul Dynasty, posted this on Twitter, which seems to indicate that they're also interested in making a return to Overwatch. In the Reddit discussion about this, people were actually backing this up, saying that they heard leaks that Gen.G is actually heavily interested in entering Overwatch again in 2025. That means that we could actually see the return of both our former Seoul teams from OWL here in OWCS, which could actually be really cool. Teams aren't the only thing coming back to Korea though, as two amazing players recently posted that they are LFT. First up was Edison, John Sojourn himself, and OWL champion with the Dallas Fuel. Similar to Hisu, we haven't really seen anything from him since OWL ended, but after seeing this first year of OWCS, it looks like he's ready to get back in the saddle, so that should be really exciting. Another player that just announced their return is Architect, a world champion with SF Shock, who then went to play for the Hangzhou Spark. He also posted an LFT, and while we haven't seen him play for a team in a long time, we did get to see him recently in the G-Star Cup, so it seems like that may have reignited his competitive spark. He might have a lot of catching up to do, but real ones know how good this guy was at his peak. Over in North America, we have another returning team, as Wisp announced their return with the signing of the former TSM roster. Wisp is a classic name from the NA contender scene back in the day, and for some of these players, it's actually a return to where they made their names. Rocket in particular, he was really known as a star player for them. Now, at least this roster does seem to be only for the Faceit League, and it remains to be seen if they try and put together a team for OWCS as well. The reason I say that is because Kuffa recently made a post showing this project team that is looking for an org, featuring a lot of former Timeless players. The key thing here though is that we see Vision and Squid are on the roster, which is what kind of seems to imply they won't be sticking with Wisp in the long term, and Wisp might need to do some rebuilding. But I'm sure that these players will be very comfortable here, so hopefully this roster does get signed. Anyway, that wraps up our player updates. There's a lot of stuff there, but honestly, this is probably just the start, and you should be expecting many more updates throughout the offseason as teams prepare for 2025. But now, let's take a look ahead and see what we have coming up next for the world of Overwatch Esports. First up, we have Calling All Heroes, which is having its third major for both Challengers and Rising. The Swiss stage is on December 7th and 8th, with playoffs happening December 14th and 15th. These tournaments are always hype, and it's so much fun to see these players getting a chance to shine. Some who are already well-respected names, and some who are just beginning to write their story. So definitely tune in if you can, it's a great tournament to support. Next up, we have the Overwatch Stoop Cup, starting December 11th at 3 AM Eastern, with playoffs starting on December 19th. For anyone unaware, this is run by WDG and has all the top names of Korea. It's going to be a genuinely stacked tournament. But if getting to see Zeta, Falcons, and Raccoons throw hands again isn't enticing enough for you, WDG announced that they're having hero bans at this tournament. Rules are the same as EWC. Each team bans one hero per map, with the ban impacting both teams. Each ban must be from a different role than the other team's ban. Teams can only ban a hero once per series, but they can repeat a ban that the opposing team made. So if you're still on the fence about hero bans, this is your chance to see them firsthand. And I mean, Raccoons versus Falcons, a rematch with hero bans thrown into the mix, you are not going to want to miss that. And finally, we have the Faceit Masters Playoffs, which is starting on December 13th at 12 PM Eastern for EMEA and 5 PM Eastern for NA. This will be the final Faceit Playoffs before it starts feeding into OWCS. So expect all these teams to play really hard here, considering there's $17,000 on the line. I briefly covered the regular season results in WoW Episode 9, so you can check those out if you need to. But yeah, definitely tune in. Hopefully we'll see these teams go all out. But with that, we finally come to a close. Despite not having any games to cover, the sheer amount of news and updates this week was pretty crazy. But really, I cannot overstate how much of a good thing this is. I'll acknowledge there are a few question marks, sure, but overall, there's so many positive things happening here for the scene. It really is a great time to be a fan. As always, links to everything I talked about can be found right down below. And again, make sure you enter the jersey giveaway, don't miss your chance. Now, all this news can be hard to keep track of, but you don't gotta worry, because if you can't keep up with it all, that's what I'll be here for. Thank you all so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, take care.